Thank you very, very much, Mr. Machila. I am just so honored to have this opportunity to present today, and I think it's even more of an honor because today is Friday, and yesterday on Thursday we were celebrating the International Day of the Book, right? And the International Day of Reading. So I think it is opportune that today we are talking about the literature review when we were just talking about books and reading. I'd like to thank Professor Mbata and her team and her office for this opportunity, and Mr. Machila for organizing this workshop, because we only have 2 hours to deal with a topic that ordinarily would take days and sometimes months to work on. Let's just get to it. So today we are dealing with writing the literature review. And because I'm from English studies, I like to throw in a word or two and to see how far we get with that. So today's word is bibliophile. Bibliophile. Do we know what this word means? If you do, you can type the meaning on the chat on the side, on the Q&A on the side. And if you don't know what this word means, just type I do not know or IDK. And if you like, you can quickly go on Google and type in bibliophile, and then you can come back and tell us what it means. Now, what I like about online teaching and learning and online workshops is that we have this leeway to quickly consult when there's something that we do not understand. Bibliophile. What does it mean, and why is it important that I refer to bibliophile as we begin this workshop on the literature review? Anyone? Can you tell us what it means, and can you tell us why it is important that I talk about this as we begin this workshop? Tony, do we have any posts yet?
Yes, we we have one fully, so he or she does not know what it means.
Okay.
And Anonymous doesn't know.
Oh.
And we have Renisha. No, she's not responding to the question.
Okay.
We have one from Anonymous. They are saying, is someone that collects or has a great love of books.
Aha, and I recognize that one from Google. Thank you very much, Anonymous. Do we have any more? Let's have one more minute to go through them. And do we have anyone who can tell us why it is important that we talk about bibliophiles as we begin this workshop on the literature review? They are still Googling, right? And the internet is not too fast.
Comments are coming in. Futomi and Donna saying people who love for books.
Yeah.
And we also share the same sentiments.
Okay.
We are also getting responses. Others are saying they don't know.
Okay, I like that, Tony. What do you think? I like that candid response, that very honest response. I do not know, because once we know that we do not know, then we can do something about it. Thank you very much for those responses. So a bibliophile, rightfully, as said earlier, is someone, one, who collects books, two, who has a passion for reading, right? Three, someone who goes all out to engage himself or herself in the activity of reading. So now that we understand what a bibliophile is, can we see now the connection between beginning a presentation on the literature review and referring to bibliophiles, right? For those of you who are still trying to find the relationship, it's because a person who will write what's the word that I will use? Who will be successful in writing the literature review is a person who is not afraid to read, one, but also a person who goes all out to read as much as possible. Fact, you will not be able to write a literature review without reading. Let me rephrase that. You will not be able to write the literature review without reading. Did you see what I did there? I said I'm rephrasing, but I actually repeated myself. There is no way in heaven, earth, and under the earth, and under the water, under the sea, that anyone can write a successful literature review without reading. So if you were feeling like, no, I can get through this, I can waffle through the literature review, I can get it done without extensive and intensive reading, please take that idea, wrap it up nicely, and throw it away into a rubbish bin. There is no way that you can write a literature review without reading. It is important for postgraduate students, it is important for researchers, it is important for writers in academia to grasp this fact that before you can write a literature review of any kind, you need to have immersed yourself in reading. You need to have taken the time to note what others have said about your topic. Because even if you think that your topic is novel, your topic is new, your topic is fresh, no one has ever written about your topic, the fact is someone out there has written something related to your topic. And now you will come to me and say, no, but Thuli, I will be writing about the marriage of Tokoloshes in African culture. And I know for a fact that no one has ever written about lobola negotiations when Tokoloshes are getting married. That might be true, but even though someone maybe has never written about Tokoloshes per se, there are people who have written about the supernatural. There are people who have written about the mythology, the mystic world, the world of the spirits, right? So again, let's just bear this fact within our minds, within our hearts, and within our souls. We need to read. And this is just a by the way fact, right? According to literature, a postgraduate student has to read a minimum of 300 words per minute. This is a challenge to you. How many words can you read per minute? 10 words? 20 words? 100 words? How many words can you read a minute? And I need you, as we continue with this workshop, I need you to take notes on the side. You can use your journal, you can use your phone, you can use your laptop, you can just use your pen and paper. And this is the first challenge for you that you will do after this workshop. Count and time yourself. Switch on your cell phone, take it to timer, and read a paragraph. Check how many words that paragraph has and how long it takes you to read that word, to read that paragraph. Okay, now that we have that advert out of the way, let's get to the business of the literature review. And I'm glad that the audience today is students who are postgraduate students. You have passed your junior degrees and you are now at postgraduate level. Let me ask from you, what is a literature review? Right? A literature review. What is that? In which sections do we review literature? In which sections of your proposal do you review literature? And what are your experiences of literature review? Again, let's go to our chats on the side, the Q&A on the side, and I'll be nice with this one. Just answer one of those three questions. If you choose to answer one, just tell us what you think a literature review is. If you choose to answer two, just tell us which sections of the proposal or even the dissertation or even the honors final paper, which sections, in which section or which sections do we review literature? Number three, what are your experiences of literature reviews so far? I know that most of you just finished your junior degree. So what are your experiences of literature review? Again, if you don't have any experiences of literature review, just write 0, nada, nothing, luto. Okay. Again, let's go to our Q&A. Tony, are there any answers yet, or people are still typing?
Yeah, we have one from Anonymous. They are saying review and put in bracket of literature related to your topic.
It has to be related to your topic. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments?
Okay, reverse one is not related to.
That's okay. That's okay. Again, answer one or all of those questions. What is a literature review? In which sections do we review literature? What are your experiences of literature reviews? What have been your experiences? What are your current experiences?
We have Thuli. We review literature on abstract and conclusion.
Okay.
Anonymous, 0 experience. ITK saying literature review is after the abstract. Anonymous is saying literature review is an examination of existing scholarly work on a topic. Mangaliso, a literature review is a scholarly paper.
Oh, okay.
We have one from Anonymous. It is the study of the latest information on the subject from journals.
Latest information. Okay, I like that. I like your students, Tony. They are clued up, as we say, or as they say, as young people say. They are clued up. We do have a clue. We do have an idea of what a literature review is. So I'm glad we have a solid base for this discussion. Before we go on, let us make a distinction between a literature review and reviewing literature. For those of you who have taken some of our modules in English studies, or those of you who remember what you did in high school, the first one, a literature review, is a noun. Literature review is a noun. And the second one, reviewing literature, is a verb. Okay? So when we talk about a literature review, we are talking about a section in your proposal, a section in your final honors paper, a section in your dissertation. Sometimes it's a chapter if it's in your dissertation. So this is a dedicated section in your paper that is called a literature review. It's a noun. But a verb that says reviewing literature, that is the action, the activity of reviewing literature. So the answer to the second question there, okay, in which sections do we review literature? We review literature actually from the beginning of your paper to the end of your paper. Your introduction will have a review of literature because in your introduction, you will be setting the scene. You will be talking about what has been done thus far. In the actual section or chapter called a literature review section, you will also be reviewing literature. In your methodology, you will also be reviewing literature because if you say you will be collecting data through interviews, we want to hear what literature says about interviews. If you say you are conducting a qualitative study, we will need to hear what literature says about qualitative studies. And then we continue. In your discussion chapter, in your discussion section, you will still review literature because you will be comparing your findings to what literature says, what previous research says about your study. Even in the conclusion, as you look at future research, what can be done in the future, you review literature. Now, I need to ask from you, are we clear with the distinction between a literature review section or chapter and the activity of reviewing literature? If you are clear with that distinction, I need you to give me a thumbs up. Just put a thumbs up, and or you can use okay, okay, okay. If you are not clear, just say that again, Thuli. If you're still not clear, say repeat. And of course, I won't say like the old people who used to say repeat again, because repeating again is too repetitive. Okay, now I need your feedback here. Are we clear with the distinction, with the difference between a literature review and the activity of reviewing literature? What's the status, Tony?
Lisa is saying, Lisa, it's okay. There's a lot of okays that are.
All right, great. That means we can continue. Now, let us talk about the act of reviewing literature, the verb of reviewing literature. What is that thing? When we say we are reviewing literature, what are we doing? Are we just reporting? Are we just telling the reader what other people have said about your study? If you are investigating water purification in rural areas, does your literature review just tell us what authors say about water purification? If your paper is on bullying in schools, does your literature review report on past research on bullying in schools? If your paper is on administration and management of local governments in South Africa, does your literature review just report what other writers and other researchers have said about local government? No. Big no. And oh, no. When we say we are reviewing literature, the act of reviewing literature involves all those words that you see on your screen. A review is an analysis. You do not just report, but you analyze what others have said. A review is an assessment. You assess what has been said on the topic. A review is judgment. You judge. What do we mean by judge? Because you judge if this piece of literature, this past research, is it relevant to my topic or is it irrelevant? That is judgment. You assess the importance of that literature. You don't just report. You don't just hoy anything. Just because you are writing about Barbie dolls, the influence of playing with Barbie dolls on Black girls growing up, then anything that has to do with Barbie doll, you hoy. You assess, is this important? Is this not important? Is it relevant? Is it not relevant? You rate, you probe, you critique. What do we mean by critique? When we critique, we compare. We say in the early 50s, researchers encouraged corporal punishment. But as years progressed, the views on corporal punishment have changed to being more lenient. Can you see what we did there? I'm not just reporting. I'm not just saying Machila 2021 says plagiarism is wrong. Shandu Phetla 1955 says plagiarism is right. Mbata 1969 says that it depends. Plagiarism sometimes is wrong, sometimes it's not. Can you see what I did there? One wants to just say, so-and-so says, so-and-so states, so-and-so says. But when we critique, when we present the literature review, we want to critique it. We want to probe it. We want to explore it. We want to evaluate it. We want to inspect the literature review. And it's a commentary. You comment on the literature review. You say, in the past 10 years, it seems it is research that emanates from the West that has taken predominance in this topic. Why? Because you notice that, Haibo, hang on, all the literature written on the topic of technology comes from America. Why is it that we don't have research papers coming from Africa? That is a postgraduate student at UNISA reviewing literature. You are not merely reporting, you are reviewing, and all those words should be part of your literature review. Now, I need to call an altar call. I need people who are turning away from the sin of thinking that a literature review is just a report on past publications. If really you are turning away from that sin, I need you to raise your hand. I need you to give me a thumbs up. I need you to say, I repent. I need you in the Q&A. Tony, are we getting anyone repenting from the sin of thinking that a literature review is just a report? Anyone?
No response.
Who's saying no response? Oh, let me preach again. I don't think they heard me. Should I preach again, Tony?
No, they are again. They are giving some feedback.
Okay. Are we turning over a new leaf? From now on, we do not view a literature review as just a report, as just as saying, so-and-so says, so-and-so states. Let's continue. So a literature review is not a shopping cart of contents. It is not about name dropping, and it is not about name showcasing. What do I mean about a shopping cart of contents? In your literature review, you do not just throw in anything that has to do with the topic. Those of you who like to go shopping using a trolley, I know that some of you like to go shopping using a basket, but some of us, we use the trolley to lean on it as we shop. Now, when someone goes shopping, they go through the aisles and they see washing powder, they put it in the trolley. They see dishwashing liquid, they put it in the trolley. They see mayonnaise, they put it in the trolley. They see body wash, they put it in the trolley. They see a packet of potatoes, they put it in the trolley. But if you had to ask this person and say, what is the relationship between a bag of potatoes and body wash? Will the person tell you, no, there is no clear relationship? Or what is the relationship between mayonnaise and washing powder? There is no relationship, but they are just thrown in together because maybe they are household groceries. Now, I have read literature reviews where people just throw in so and so says, Mbata says, and you're thinking, what does this have to do with the argument in the literature review? And others just name drop. Just because Professor Radele is an expert in masculinity. Now, everyone who is writing anything about masculinity, Radele 2020, Radele 2019, Radele 2015, Radele 2012, this is not about name dropping. It's not about you mentioning important names in the research area. But what is a literature review then? If it is not all the things that we have just mentioned, what is it? Definition 1. A literature review is a scholarly piece of writing that traces developments in a specific area. And I cited Green et al. 2006. And a literature review enables researchers to position their own investigations within a larger discourse, right? So one, it is scholarly. It is not corridor talk. It is not what people are just talking about out there. It is scholarly. In other words, it has to be based on past published or sometimes unpublished research, like a thesis of someone, a dissertation of someone. It might not be published, but it is written and examined. So by scholarly, we mean it has to be a credible scientific piece of reference. And it traces developments, right? In other words, you do not just write, okay, let's say we're talking about COVID-19. You don't just talk about COVID-19 now, what is happening now, but we want to see you tracing its development, where it started, how it developed, what has been happening, right? So let's be very careful when we write our literature review. We do not just locate it in the now. Make sure that at least it traces the topic. 2, it has to be scholarly. It has to be scholarly. It has to come from a journal, article, a book, or maybe a podcast, a blog from an expert in the field. It's scholarly because it's based on scientific research. And it needs to position your investigation within a larger discourse. That is why when you write a literature review, you will also include the broader debates in the field, while you also discuss the more pertinent debates that are pertinent to your specific investigation. So if you were writing about people living with HIV and AIDS and how they have been responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, the larger discourse there is HIV and AIDS, right? And the susceptibility to other diseases. That's a larger discourse. So how do you position now your own research, this small scale research that you are doing by using past research? Okay, let's look at the second definition. Can you see that it is a comprehensive study and interpretation of literature that addresses a specific topic. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, when we write the literature review, when we review literature, we are not interested in the shallow, cursory take of what literature says within the topic. But it's not shallow, but it is comprehensive. In other words, here's this honors student. Actually, here's this honors unison. You are a UNISA student, for goodness sake, huh? You do your work excellently, right? So you have immersed yourself in writing. You have read far and wide about entrepreneurship, okay? Entrepreneurship and young people in townships, or even in what is known as informal settlements, right? That's your topic. And now you have read about entrepreneurship, you have read about informal settlements, you have read about youth development, you are just a well-read person. Your literature review has to be comprehensive. In other words, it has to cover all the facets of the research topic. It has to look at all the angles of the research topic. If you're writing about political parties and their behavior in parliament, a comprehensive literature review will show the different perspectives, right? It will not only show the perspective of a more aggressive approach in parliament, but it will look at the aggressive approach, it will look at a more philosophical approach, it will look at a more peaceful approach, because it is comprehensive. You are a postgraduate student and you have to be comprehensive in your take. But secondly, you need to interpret, not just report, interpret the literature review. All right. If you are happy with this, give me a thumbs up, give me an amen, give me a right on, give me a yes, we can. Any feedback is useful. Now, what is the purpose of a literature review? Why do we need a literature review? Why is there a section on the literature review? Why is it there? Because you know what you want to research, you know that you want to collect data, you know what you want to do. Why do we have to go back to a literature review? The purpose of a literature review is to objectively report on current knowledge on a topic based on a summary and synthesis of previously published research. We are not just reporting that so-and-so said, but we are basing that on a summary and a synthesis. And we'll get to that, because I see you might be thinking, what's the difference between a summary and a synthesis? We'll get to that, don't worry. Bear with me. Of previously published research. Notice how whenever I make these arguments, these assertions, these claims, notice what happens. I bring in the reference, because these are not my words. I agree with them. They help me to support my arguments, but I did not think this or write this from scratch. These words belong to Eviard, 2010, and these words belong to Green, Johnson, and Adams, 2006. I like them. I like these words, but they are not mine. So I have to acknowledge them. Now, mind that I've been teaching English for years, and I've been teaching research writing for years. And of course, I can easily claim that these are my words because it's what I know. I know for a fact that a literature review is based on a summary and a synthesis, but I cannot say that when I write my proposal, when I write my exit paper, when I write my dissertation. I cannot say these words or put forward these arguments if I cannot support them with literature. That hit hard, right? You cannot make claims or arguments in the literature review if you cannot support them using references, even if you know those things for a fact. I'll give you an example. There's a student who grew up in rural areas, who experienced what it is like to serve under a chief, a village chief, right? And this student knew all about how some village chiefs will make people pay maybe for money, make people pay maybe for land and everything. He knew that for a fact firsthand. And so he included that information in the literature review. In some villages, a chief requires payment for whatever. And that had to be scrapped out. I told him, you cannot include this. Why? Because there is no literature to back it up. Unfair? Maybe. But this is academic writing. You cannot make an argument, you cannot make a claim without supporting it using literature. Claims such as in South Africa, more women have taken up the role of breadwinner. And you don't back that up with literature. Nope, it's not part of the literature review. Take it out. Even if you read it somewhere, but now you've forgotten where you found it. If you cannot find the reference, take it out in the literature review. Maybe when you are talking about findings and you say someone said in your findings, then that's fine. But with the literature review, you take it out. Let's continue. Now, there are different types of literature review. Before we get to that, I need to just make it clear. When we say these are types of literature review, we are not saying that each literature review will have one type of literature review throughout, but you can have a mix of these kinds of literature review. Sometimes when we review literature, we can narrate. It's a narrative literature review. And it provides a summary of the body of literature. Okay? This is where you say Shandu Phetla 2019 states that teenagers experience bullying on a daily basis. It's a narrative. Mbata 2013 claims that the economies, that developing economies in Africa will face more difficult situations in the 20th century. Okay, you are narrating, you are summarizing what has been written before. But we also have something called systematic literature review. This is where now you go deeper, as people say. You become comprehensive. You graduate from just narrating, from just summarizing. A comprehensive literature review involves meta-analysis, where you look at patterns and relationships from previous findings. A pattern, for example, could be research in CSET, right? In science, engineering, and technology. Research in science, engineering, and technology has been produced mainly by male scientists. That is a pattern. And then you support that with evidence. In the past 20 years, 90% of 90% of articles have been written by male. You are looking for patterns, or you are looking for relationships. Relationships between past or previous findings. You find that there's a relationship between research produced in America and that produced in India, for example. You look at this and you say, this relationship, it seems that every time research comes from India, it complements research from America. Something like that. I'll give you an example with open distance learning and research in open distance learning. Most research from overseas, that is America, the UK, and so on, the research focuses on artificial intelligence. It focuses on creating apps and everything. And then most research from Africa focuses on using technology then for supporting students. And that technology seems to be linked to technologies that are accessible to students. That is a relationship. You are not merely reporting, you are meta-analyzing. We also have meta-synthesis. That kind of literature review evaluates and interprets findings. In other words, you do not just look at the fact that students at UNISA use laptops to access the internet or use laptops to access virtual classes. You interpret that and look at how students who are funded by NSFAS are actually given money or funds to purchase laptops. You are interpreting findings. But you are interpreting interpreting previous research using current research. Because you cannot just say students are given NSFAS, given laptops without quoting someone, without citing someone, without references. And then we have something called the argumentative literature review that supports or refutes an argument. There are people even today who are convinced, right? Who are convinced that male leaders are better leaders in politics. So that kind of literature review will have a section to support that argument, that male leaders perform better in politics. And then you use your literature, you use your books, you use Fanon, you use philosophers, you use podcasts, anything that supports your argument, okay? And then we have something called a theoretical literature review. This one just focuses on theories and what is researched about those theories. If you're looking at the theory of social constructivism, your research or your literature review focuses solely on the theory of social constructivism, how it was born, how it has evolved, what it is used for. If you're using what's the topical one, Africanism, Ubuntu, the theory. Okay, you research it, you just focus on it without looking at empirical research to say so and so interviewed 10,000 people. If you can interview 10,000 people, interviewed 10 people and sent out a survey to 20,000 people. No, a theoretical literature review focuses on the theories, how they've been researched, how they've developed, how they have evolved. Okay. Decoloniality, it's a theory. So one can just have a literature review researching what other researchers are saying about decoloniality, where it emanates from, how it has grown, how it has evolved, how it is discussed, the narratives around decoloniality. Okay, so now that we have types of the literature review, let us look at how we can organize the literature review. Okay, your literature review can be organized chronologically. Okay, let me take a breather and ask from you, how do you think you can organize a literature review chronologically? What do we mean when you say it's a chronological organization? What does it involve? What do you think? Back to the Q&A, back to the chat. Type in something where you can look at the chronological organization of the literature review. You can give us an example, or you can just tell us what it means. Chronological organization of the literature review. And I shall give you a minute or two. Anything yet, Tony?
Yes. We have timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is saying dates. How us have from then. France discussed in relation to timeline.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm happy that we are on the same page. So a chronological literature review looks at the development of the research topic over time. You are looking at timelines, yes. You are looking at the development over time. Let us look at the narratives around the stem cell research, okay? Or stem cell research, yeah. Back in the day, there were people did not really warm up to the idea of stem cell research, right? For religious reasons, for philosophical reasons. So there was that jostling of ideas between scientists and religious leaders, right? So chronologically then, you would map the development of stem cell research over the years. And you can say stem cell research traces its beginnings in whatever year, okay? And in the 1950s, there was the arguments between scientists and religious leaders. It was in the 70s that the Pope declared in relation to stem cell research. Of late, in the year 2020, this development happened. Can you see how we are tracing, we are mapping the topic over the years? Now, depending on the type or the research area, others could be, you can look at the developments in decades. Sometimes in centuries. In the 16th century, this is what happened. But then at the turn of the century, in the 17th century, this and this happened. And others in decades, and others in annual developments. But then a topic like the corona pandemic, can you really trace it over centuries? Not really. You can look at other pandemics over centuries, but the corona is developing in such a pace that sometimes we can even trace it over months. In December, this virus was reported from in China. By January, this and this had happened. By February, this and this has happened. In March, countries went into total lockdown. In April, can you see what's happening? So your interpretation of chronological organization depends on the type of research and the topic. Any research in technology cannot really be traced chronologically using centuries because technology changes so fast. I mean, last month, Teams could only accommodate 250 people. By the end of this month, I hear the normal teams will be accommodating 1,000 participants. Not so long ago, WhatsApp could only accommodate 50 groups, 50 people in a group. But now I think it has gone up to about 200 or 250. So your chronological interpretation has to be relevant. It has to be linked to your research topic. Okay, now your literature review can also be organized thematically, right? In categories. Let's say we were investigating common law, right? Common law in relation to cohabitation. Common law in relation to cohabitation. So if you wanted to look at themes, you would look at, for example, the role of common law or the role of the judiciary. You would look at the role of community leaders. You would look at the role of culture when we discuss common law and cohabitation. Can you see what I'm doing there? I am creating categories. I am looking at themes in relation to the research topic. If I were to write something, or actually my literature review, when I was writing my literature review on mobile learning, I had themes where I looked at mobile learning for basic education, for higher education institutions, right? These are themes, these are categories. You could look at the benefits of something, technology. You can look at the benefits of technology. You can look at the disadvantages of technology. You can look at technology in developing countries. Can you see what you're doing? You are grouping your literature review according to pertinent categories. Now, what usually works with organizing your literature review is using numbering, using subheadings, and also using transition devices. Transition devices, that is a workshop on its own. But transition devices, we are looking at the vocabulary, we are looking at the phrases that we use in order to enhance logical flow in our literature review. As you transition from one theme to the other, how do you do that in a logical flow? As you transition between the eras in your chronological literature review, how do you transition in a way that makes sense and in a way that flows? Words like in addition to, words like while HIV and AIDS focused on spreading it in the early 80s, the introduction of 1, 2, can you see what I'm doing there? Words like however, words like therefore, thus, these are your transitioning devices. So what is important is that we vary our transitioning devices. And here's an exercise for you, a second challenge for you. Please write in your notebook, your phone, your notepad. Challenge number 2. Go to a draft that you have. It could be an essay, it could be your proposal, it could be whatever that you have. And I need you to go through there and see how you use transitioning devices. Some people are obsessed with one transition word. Some people are just obsessed with however. When you read their work, it's however everywhere. Whether it fits or doesn't fit, how they begin the sentences with however, they end sentences with however. You find however in the middle of the sentence, however, however, however. I like to make an example of a friend of mine who used to be obsessed with the word otherwise. My friend, when you said, Chomza, how are you? It will, otherwise, I'm fine. How? When you ask, so what did you do over the weekend? Otherwise, we went out for dinner and I just didn't like the food. Otherwise, I'll see what I will do next week. What does otherwise mean? Okay. So be careful of your transition devices because they bring together your literature review. They make it one meaningful whole. So again, here's your challenge. Go to your drafts, check how you are organizing your literature review. Is your literature review all about chronological organization? Do you have themes? Have you numbered your literature review? Do you have subheadings? Do you use transition devices? Words like in as much as STEM education has been developing in Africa, there remains a dearth in research in relation to Black academics, something like that. We are using transition devices. And now, how do we articulate the literature review? Remember, we were talking about organizing it. Now, how do we articulate the literature review? When we articulate, when we write the literature review, when we present the literature review, we need to use it to develop arguments in coherent and cohesive paragraphs. Don't worry, I'll talk through this in a second. We transition for flow, for meaningful flow. We back up assertions and we avoid plagiarism. Okay. Now, if you could just close your eyes wherever you are, but if you're driving, please don't close your eyes. I need you to remember, back in high school, back in English 1501, ENN 103F, I'm reminding you of those modules now. When we were teaching you about writing sentences and writing paragraphs. So when we articulate the literature review, we want to use sentences and paragraphs to develop your arguments. In other words, each sentence and each paragraph should serve a purpose in your literature review. And there should be a relationship between sentences and paragraphs. Let's have an example. If your main argument is that student support in ODL can only be enhanced through increased funding. It's an example. Remember, people, oh Lord, don't take me to the SRC and the VC and said, Thuli said we need to increase funding. It's an example. Your argument is that student support can be enhanced through increased funding. That's an argument. Okay? Now, you find the different aspects of this argument. For example, you can have a paragraph that focuses on student funding in general in South Africa. You see what's happening there? The whole paragraph focuses on student funding. What about it? How is it structured in South Africa? Who benefits and how do they benefit? Okay. That's a paragraph that is focused on student funding instruments in South Africa. And then you have another paragraph on how student bodies are involved in the funding of student support activities. That paragraph focuses mainly on that particular perspective, that particular phase of the argument. Okay, so when we say arguments in coherent and cohesive paragraphs, we are saying one paragraph flows logically to the other. So from the paragraph on student funding instruments, you cannot just move abruptly or out of the blue. The next paragraph is about SRCs. What is the relationship between student funding and SRC? And this is where your transition devices come in, right? Put glue, put a sticker, put sticky tape, put something that shows the relationship between paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. Don't kill your reader with shock. Your reader is sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I thought we were still talking about HIV and AIDS in Africa. Next thing, we are talking about soapies on television and how they portray HIV and AIDS. Wait, what's the relationship? How are they related? How did we get here? Right? There has to be a link. Link your paragraphs. We need to see the relationship. Okay, the other one, it's transition. Back up your assertions. I mentioned this earlier. If you do not back up an assertion in the literature review, then you take that assertion out. You kick it out. Because even if you know much about a topic, if there is no literature to back it up, then you take it out. Finally, you avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is an interesting one. And as we move to the next slide, I need you on the Q&A chat. Talk to us about plagiarism. What is it? What is plagiarism? What do you understand by the word plagiarism? What does it mean? And if you don't know what it means, tell us how you feel about it. Whenever you see the word plagiarism, how do you feel about it? Do you get scared? Do you laugh because you think, it's not even an issue for me? How does the word plagiarism make you feel? And for some of you are sitting there and saying, Thuli, stop pronouncing words like you are crazy. It's plagiarism. Okay, how do you feel about plagiarism? Of course, it's plagiarism. But how do you feel about this word? What does it mean? What does it mean to you? How do you feel about it? What is it? What is this animal? called plagiarism. And if you don't know what it is, type the Q&A. Type, I don't know, IDK, have no idea, zero idea, zilch idea, nada idea, I don't know, angazi, luto, next, sil, akitibi sil, I don't know. Type that in the Q&A and then we will continue because we are about to do an activity that we will do together. Okay, any feedback, Tony?
Yeah. Directly copying someone else's work.
Let me just see if I heard that right. Directly copying someone else's words. Is that what they said?
Work. Yeah. Without
Words.
reference.
Directly copying without referencing. Thank you very much. Another one?
Netanya taking credit for someone else. Yes, and work.
Ooh, taking credit. Okay, so you're taking possession and you're taking credits. You're saying, these are my words. Anyone else?
Copying someone else.
Copying. We see copying again. It's coming back.
Plagiarism is when you use someone else's work, but never give them credit for their work. You make it sounded like work your own work.
Woo! Okay, you make it sound like it's your own work. So I hear words that are used here. Some are using copying, some are using the word use someone else's words, but I see also a recurrence of credits, making it your own work, your own words without giving credit. Let's take two more before we move on.
Yeah, Brandon is saying, I feel it's like a crime.
Brandon, it's like a crime. So do people who plagiarize feel like they are criminals? That is a question. That's a very illuminating, that is a very descriptive way to look at it. I feel like it is a crime. Okay, last one.
Adopting someone's work without taking recognition.
That is creative, adopting. So we have using, we have those who use, we have copying, we have those who copy, we have adopting, those who adopt. So when you adopt, you actually make your own. It becomes part of you, part of your family. And then we have something about crime, and then we have something about not giving credit. So now that we have these words, all these descriptions, right? We have all these descriptions. Let us see, how do we avoid plagiarism? Because we seem to have a common understanding that there is something, even though to some it's not very clear, but it feels like there is something a bit offish. There's something a bit not right about this whole plagiarism thing, and we want to avoid it as much as possible. A few years ago, I had this sort of workshop with students in another country, and those students said, you know, plagiarism, they felt like the label plagiarism is not right, because sometimes people use those words because they themselves lack the language to articulate their thoughts. So you see the statement and it looks, oh, this looks really good. So you are copying it, you are adopting it, you are using it, not because you are a criminal, they said. That's what they told me. No, we are using these not because we are criminals or we are offending anyone. We are just loving the way this author presents his or her thoughts. So we are copying his words because they just look stunning. They just look perfect. And I feel like if I change them, then I'll mess them up because I don't have the language ability, right? So that's another thing that we need to work on when we look at the literature review. We need to improve our language. We need to improve our expression. We need to improve the way we structure our sentences, the way we use the language, right? So these are all the words that are associated with plagiarism. And even in research, if I can just share with you, even researchers are divided when it comes to the issue of plagiarism. Other researchers say, no, we need to be lenient and understand that students are still learning. So they are not stealing, but they are modeling. And other researchers say, punish students who plagiarize and punish them severely because they cannot steal ideas. Now, whether you are on whichever end of the spectrum, what we agree upon is that we need to find ways to avoid plagiarism. How can we avoid plagiarism? One, we can use direct quotes, we can paraphrase, we can summarize, and we can synthesize. These are the 4 strategies to help us avoid plagiarism. Or at UNISA, to minimize the similarity index when you use Turnitin. Okay? So, because we depend on what we have read to make sense of our writing, we have to find strategies, okay? We need strategies to avoid plagiarism. Direct quotation, we all know. You use quotation marks and then you put author, year, and page number. This one is the easiest because you take words as they are. Talk to your supervisor about the length of your direct quote. You cannot have half a page full of a direct quote, no. Because your literature, your references are supposed to support what you say, to provide evidence for your arguments. They are not supposed to take over your work. So when you have half a page or even a quarter of a page and it's just direct quotes, we have a problem there because we cannot hear you. We just hear this direct quote. Okay, let us look at paraphrasing. When we paraphrase, ladies and gentlemen, we restate an idea or a sentence in our own words. How do we do that? How do we paraphrase? We can use synonyms, right? So instead of saying growth, you can use development. You can use progress. You can use a forward, upward development, right? So we can use synonyms, and that is why it is important that we read as much as we can so that we can increase our vocabulary. You cannot paraphrase if you do not have a strong vocabulary. True story. That's a fact. Because when we paraphrase, we rephrase, we restate, we put it in other words, met ander woorde, ngamanye amazwi. So how do you paraphrase if you do not have sufficient vocabulary? I like to use the analogy of the vocabulary, your vocabulary with a bank account. People who have sufficient money in the bank account, when they go to draw money, you see even the way they walk towards that ATM, Mara. Whether it's Capitec or Standard or what are other banks? Help me, give me names of banks. Or Netbank or ABSA or Old Mutual Bank or what's that one at Pick and Pay, Time Bank or Mukuru. Whatever bank that you use, if it's payday like it is today for some people, the way they walk to that ATM, man, they walk with confidence. The way they put in the PIN, the way they select 2,000 Rand with confidence, they are withdrawing with confidence because they know money has been deposited. But towards the end of the month or middle of the month for some of us, you know, when a person goes to that ATM, oh, they are unsure of themselves. They don't have that confidence. They think, do I put in 1,000? Let me put in 500. Let me put 10 Rand and see if it comes out. They lack confidence because they know they have not deposited enough money for them to withdraw with confidence. It's the same thing with writing. When we write, we produce. When we write, we are withdrawing from previous deposits. But when we read, we are depositing. When you read, you deposit information on spelling, on vocabulary, on punctuation. You are making deposits so that when you write, you can write with confidence, knowing that your vocabulary account is full. That's the truth. If you do not read, if you do not deposit vocabulary in your mental bank, then your paraphrasing will be difficult. And sometimes when we paraphrase, we rearrange word order. Here's an example. Students in ODL context struggle with time management and financial constraints. That's my sentence. Now I want to rearrange word order. So instead of beginning the sentence with students in ODL, then I begin my sentence with time constraints and financial constraints are the main challenges faced by students in ODL. Do you see what I did there? I just rearranged word order. So I refigured, I transformed my sentence, okay? And when we paraphrase, sometimes we also restate the idea while retaining the core meaning. Use new words, use new word order. You are restating the idea while retaining the core meaning. Do we all now understand what paraphrasing is? If you understand it, please put a thumbs up in the Q&A session. Thumbs up, please. Or write okay. Or if you are from KZN, write K. I've only seen it in KZN where people just write K. When you say, I'll meet you in town, they say K, not even okay. It's interesting. And by the way, I'm from KZN, so yay. So if we now understand what paraphrasing is, okay, K, thumbs up, right on, Thuli, continue. Here's an exercise for us. Here's a sentence that we have. There are 3 key advantages to studying online: flexibility, affordability, and freedom to study at one's own pace. You find this sentence and it's in your article, your book, and you want to paraphrase it. How would you paraphrase it? I know we don't have much time, but let's see how we can paraphrase this sentence. Any takers? Just type in your answer. If you say, oh, I can just use synonyms instead of advantage, I can use then give us that synonym. If you feel strong strong and you can type fast, you can actually rewrite that sentence. You can paraphrase it for us. If you feel that you want to give us a synonym for studying online, how else would you put that? Instead of studying online, what would you say? Instead of affordability, what word would you use? Instead of at one's own study at one's own pace, how would you rephrase that? I'll give you a minute to give us that answer. Okay? Give us a synonym, give us a new word order, or you can restate that sentence in your own words. Okay. Tony, please let me know when we have the first answer on the screen.
Yeah, the answers are coming.
Oh,
yeah,
so quick. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I must say there's an echo. Whenever I don't mute the mic and can well. I believe can I Dr. Shandu?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, we have one from Thokozani. Flexibility, affordability, and freedom to study at one's own pace are the 3 key advantages to study online.
Okay. All right, Thokozani, I see what you did there. You took the easy way out, but it's something, we'll take it. What you did, Thokozani, you literally swapped the position of words. Instead of starting with there are 3 key advantages, you just went deep into flexibility, availability, are the 3 key advantages. We'll take it. It's good. It's very good, Thokozani. Thank you very much for that, because you swapped word order, which is something that is good for us, right? Another one. Thank you, Thokozani.
Yeah, clearly same thing, but different at the end. Flexibility, affordability, and freedom to study at one's own pace are the 3 main advantages of ODEL.
Ah, okay. So studying online, you decided to give us a word that is synonymous to studying online. You decided to go for ODEL. All right, last one before we continue.
Okay, I see Brendan's one is like Thokozani. Yeah, flexibility, affordability, and freedom are the key 3 advantages from studying online.
Okay, Tony, do you notice a pattern here? If we had to write a paper and we had to analyze and do a meta-analysis literature review, do you also notice a pattern that we seem to be more confident with the word order kind of paraphrasing? Did you notice that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be one way, one strategy of paraphrasing that we are comfortable with, maybe, but also it could also be that it is familiarity. There are things that we write, the way that we write, that are based on familiarity. And it's possible that for all these years, when we think paraphrasing, we think word order. Okay, so yes, word order is but one part of paraphrasing. We can also use synonyms, right? We can, so try to vary your paraphrasing. It's not always that it's the same words, only they are positioned in different areas of the sentence. Mix them up. Do synonyms as well, do the word order as well, or do a restatement of the idea. And some of you will know this when people quote prominent politicians, then they will say, in the words of the great Rolihlahla Mandela, and I'm paraphrasing, right? And then they repeat those words, but they are restating them in their own words, all right? So, for example, for advantages, you can say critical or crucial, right? Okay, or importance, right? Or benefits instead of advantages, right? Study at one's own pace, maybe pace one's own learning, okay? Studying online, online learning, ODAL. So I'm just bringing this to your attention that you don't always have to rely on word order paraphrasing. You can always also use your synonyms and also restating. Let us move on to summarizing. Now, I need you to do this for me, ladies and gentlemen. I need you to graduate. Some of you have just been depending on direct quotes. Shandu 2019, page 2, direct quote. Machila 2012, page 20, direct quote. But you graduate to paraphrasing, and after paraphrasing, I need you to graduate to summarizing. When we summarize, we express main ideas in our own words. Remember that when we were paraphrasing at sentence level, at idea level. But when we summarize our point of summary is a bit larger. It's a bit wider than one sentence. Now we are summarizing main ideas from paragraphs, articles, and books. And the question we are asking is, what is the main idea here? So, for example, think of Long Walk to Freedom. It's a long book, hundreds of pages. But if I ask you, what is the book about? You can tell me in one sentence. You can tell me that it traces the life of Nelson Mandela from the time he was born, how he grew up, and how he ended up being the first Black president of South Africa. Right? One sentence, a book of 100 pages. So when we summarize, we pick out the main ideas in relation to your research. We don't restate. We do not rewrite Long Walk to Freedom. No, we just pick out our main idea. And here's a sentence for us. This interest can be attributed firstly to the massification of higher education, which has widened participation for large numbers of students who were educationally disadvantaged, and secondly, to the increased student mobility across national borders, which has attracted English second language students to universities where English is the educational lingua franca. Furthermore, the global academic world increasingly privileges English for publication. And you have to summarize this whole paragraph. And by the way, this is taken directly from an article. Okay, so you want to summarize this, and you want to write about the interest in learning English. Why are people interested in learning English? Why? Why do so many people register for English? Why do so many people from other countries go to other countries to learn English? Why? And you want to summarize the main reasons for that. And how do you summarize? You underline main ideas. What are the main ideas here? What are the reasons people want to register for English? Massification of higher education, increased student mobility across borders, and the global academic world increasingly privileging English for publication. These are your main ideas. And so you take this long paragraph and you just summarize it in one sentence. Now, let's move on. Synthesizing. If any of you feel like fainting when you see the word synthesizing, make sure that you have a bit of water close to you so that you will wake yourself up. For fainting at seeing the word synthesizing, synthesis. What is synthesizing? What is a synthesis when we look at the literature review? We are looking at moving beyond what authors say. In other words, we are moving beyond restating what people are saying, and we move on to the real essence of reviewing a literature. We move on to evaluating. We move on to interpreting text from various sources to create a new idea, an argument, or an assertion. Can you see how well we are graduating, ladies and gentlemen? We started from one sentence when we were directly quoting. We graduated to rephrasing an idea or a sentence. And then we graduated to summarizing paragraphs and books. And now we are graduating and we are looking at not just one book, not just one paragraph, not just one article, but we are looking at a variety of sources, various sources. So if you want to look at bullying at schools, or bullying in higher education, or even bullying in the employment sector, you will look at various sources from psychology, from theology, from philosophy, from health sciences. You are looking at a variety of sources and you are evaluating and interpreting that to create a new idea or an argument. After reading all those sources, you suddenly realize, my goodness, here's an argument, here's an assertion. The blame, it seems the blame in bullying is placed on the perpetrator. It seems the blame in bullying cases is constantly or consistently put on the perpetrator. That is an argument, that is an assertion. And how do you support it? Then you say in legal proceedings, whenever the perpetrator was blamed or was found guilty of whatever. In nursing science, it seems patients who are admitted, you are creating an argument based on various sources. From a religious perspective, bullying is a sin where the perpetrator should be punished. Can you see what I'm doing there? I am using various sources to support or create a new argument or an assertion. That is why I'm saying we need to graduate. Check your literature review. And if your literature review really only ends with a summary of some sources, you need to graduate and include some section where you will look at a variety of sources. So we critically evaluate. It seems authors, it seems there is discord. It seems there is no agreement with regard to the definition of clinical psychology. You are evaluating because you've read all these sources and you feel that source A says this is what it is. Source B says this is what it is. Source 3, this is what it is. Source 4, this is what it is. Then the new argument is there is no agreement in relation to the definition. There is no agreement. There lacks an agreement. There lacks consensus in relation to the treatment of spiritual possession. Psychologists say, talk to this person and give him medication. Religious leaders say, exorcist. Linguists say, analyze their writing. Philosophers say, go back to the childhood and see what trauma was there. There is discord. Okay. The corona pandemic. Okay. Look at how different authors have written about the whole issue of wearing masks. You are evaluating, you are interpreting various sources. So when you create something new, you can create a new argument, you can create a new assertion, you can have a table synthesizing the development of distance education from when it was paper-based to when it was TV and radio to when it was internet-based. You are creating something new within your literature review. You can have a table, you can have a mind map, you can have a picture graph, you can have, these are all the things you can to show us that you consulted a variety of sources. Okay, this exercise is for you. You can do it in your own time. This is challenge number 3. And you can do this in your own time because I need us to go here. This is our summary. When we reference, we use referencing as evidence. We can use direct quotations. We can use paraphrasing. We can summarize. We can synthesize. When we direct quote, when it's a direct quote, we reference ideas using exact words. When we paraphrase, we restate ideas in our own words. When we summarize, we express main ideas in our, can you see the graduation? We are not restating, now we are expressing main ideas. And then when we synthesize, we evaluate, we interpret ideas from various sources towards creating our own arguments. Okay, now, quick exercise for us. Give me a summary. Okay, give me which one of those from 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one is a direct quote? Type it in the Q&A. Is it number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? Which one is a direct quote? Just type in the number. Any answers, Tony?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay, we're still reading.
We have one.
Okay, the number 1.
Yes.
Awesome. Any other answer?
Yes, we have. There seems to be one.
Okay, a lot of ones. That is a direct quote. Why is it a direct quote? Because we see quotation marks and we see the author, date, and page number. Okay, it's a direct quote. Now, which one of those 4 is a synthesis? 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one of those is a synthesis? And if you feel brave enough, if you feel confident enough, you can tell us the reason why you say number 2 is a synthesis or number 1 is a synthesis. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one is a synthesis? Why do you say it's a synthesis? And if you feel you only want to write the number, that's okay. We don't judge. Just write the number that you think is a synthesis.
We seem to be getting a lot of force on this.
Awesome.
Also one, but majority are false.
Okay, perfect. So we are okay with the distinction between direct quote, paraphrase, summary, and synthesis. Do we have anyone, Tony, who is telling us why they think number 4 is synthesis?
Chloe is saying we have various authors.
Aha, various authors. I like that. We have Roots, we have Shandu Phetla, we have Lephalala. Can you also see the assertion? Can you see the argument? The general concession is that academic administrators should ... That is an argument, right? Now look at the transitions that are used there in that synthesis. Isn't it just beautiful? Look at that. While the general concession, comma, researchers differ. Can you see how we are developing the argument and we are using transition words? Okay. Lephalala supports the assertion that, can you see what is happening there? We are not just reporting, but we are linking what Lephalala says to what Shandu Phetla says. Did you notice that? We are creating that logical flow, that cohesion between sentences, right? So Shandu Phetla and look at that relationship between what Shandu Phetla says and what Lephalala says. And in the end, look at that evaluation. What is evident thus is that, can you see what this person is saying? This person is taking now all the 3 authors, putting them together, not summarizing, but evaluating, analyzing, interpreting. What is evident thus is that 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that was an example. Now, as we go towards the end of this presentation, some of you then say, I am not sure how to begin my literature review. It happens. It happens that you're not sure how to begin your literature review, okay? So the best way to begin is to look at the structure of a literature review. Okay. First, you need to have an overview of the subject. If you're looking at the culinary skills of inmates in Pretoria, you look at whether people who are in jail are able to cook or not. Okay. So the overview of the subject area is the theories around the incarcerated. Okay, that's a broad overview. If you're looking at maybe consumer sciences, what's the broader area? If you're looking at agriculture and whether South Africa should continue to import frozen chicken from Brazil, that's your topic. What is the broader area? Could it be inter-country import and export agreements? What is the main overview of the research area? And then your literature review should have definitions. Come on. How can you start telling us about something that you have not even defined? What do we mean by mobile learning? What do we mean about geriatric care? What do we mean about palliative care in the time of the pandemic? What is that? What do we mean by aesthetics? You're writing a paper on beauty as an important part of succeeding in interviews. You are making a claim that people who are considered beautiful are more successful in interviews than people who are considered not so beautiful. Definition of terms. What is that? What is aesthetics? What is beauty, right? And then after you have your definition of terms, then you can have your categories, right? 2.3, this category, 2.4, that category, 2.5, that category. Or you can have chronological sections, the development of the whole issue of child rearing. Okay. How has it developed? From the time when people thought that children should be seen and not heard, to the time when people believe that spare the rod, spoil the child, to the time of human rights. Okay. And then towards the end, you will have a synthesis of your literature review. There has to be a point where you have a synthesis, because your synthesis will also show you that there is a gap there, there is an agreement there, there is no agreement there. And then you have your conclusion. Tony, if you will allow me, I would like to give students examples of how they can brainstorm a literature review. I know we have about 10 minutes left. So maybe in about 5 minutes, I'll just show examples of how we can brainstorm, begin a literature review. And I'm going back to what I said earlier, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot write the literature review if you have not read. Out of the question. So if you feel you are stuck, you don't know how to begin your literature review, or you feel like you have written it, but it doesn't make sense, it's not structured well, or you feel like you have written it, but the logical flow, man, it doesn't flow logically. I'd like to invite you to try out writing. You can use pen and paper. You can use the internet and go to this nice website. It's called Mind Map, MINDMUP. If you could type it up for me, Tony, in the chat, MINDMUP, Mind Map. If you just check on Google, find Mind Map. It helps you to organize your thoughts. I did this one for stages of grief for my project with widows. Can you see that the main idea there is stages of grief, and flowing from the stages of grief, I have denial, bargaining, testing, anger, shock, depression, acceptance. This is my first level of my literature review. So this means that I will have a section on denial, a section on bargaining, a section on testing, a section on depression, a section on acceptance. And under each section, I'll have a subsection. Under denial, I'll have a paragraph on the manifestations of denial and examples. I'll have a paragraph on seeking help during denial. Under bargaining, I'll have a paragraph on the manifestations of bargaining. This is what it looks like. And I will have how to seek help for that stage. And I will even have the effects of bargaining on the grief process. Can you see what I'm doing there? I am organizing my ideas so that my paragraphs will flow logically, and one paragraph will feed to the other, and the relationship between paragraphs will be clearer, but more than that, I will see a link between my paragraphs and the main topic. If you can just see those main ones flowing from the topic. This is one example. Here's another example. I think I used this one with the previous group. This one, I'm looking at facilitating student support for students with disabilities in ODL. And this one, I use different colors to show the different sections of my literature review. Can you see that blue flows, and it flows for student support? And under student support, I'll have subsections on types of student supports. I'll have definitions of student support. These are my subsections, and it flows nicely. There's a logical flow. And I have green there where I have students with disabilities, where I will define what we mean by students with disabilities. And I'll have types of students with disabilities. I also have that red there, that shade of red, and another shade of blue. This is how you plan your literature review. And this helps you how? To show that, one, you have covered all the aspects of your topic. If you don't do this, ladies and gentlemen, you will write your literature review. Right at the end, you will realize that there are gaps. Or this, you might even realize that you have sections that are irrelevant, that are redundant, that you don't need there. But when you do this, as you write your literature review, preferably before you write it, but if you've already started, that's okay. Stop and map your ideas. Because then you will realize, oh man, I am missing something on this facilitation. What do we mean by facilitation? Okay, let me have another branch on facilitation. Okay. Or I'm missing a branch on the management of student support. Let me have a branch on student support. Or you might feel, I don't need this branch. Let me cut it out. You are organizing your thoughts, you are organizing your ideas for a logical flow. Because for a literature review, you are not writing it just so that you have 10 or 15 or 20 pages of past literature. It needs to speak to your topic. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be current. It needs to serve a purpose. And this is the last one. This one, you can go to your Word documents, go to Word, go to Insert, and insert Smart Art. And then you have a variety of things that you can do, and then you can put this. This one I did on student experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have a lot of paragraphs there, 2, 4, 6, 7 subsections. I have a section where I talk about the COVID-19 as a pandemic. And under that, I have paragraphs. I have a paragraph on definition. I have a paragraph on description of COVID-19. And under the paragraph on description, I have a section on appearance. What does it look like? Mutation, how does it change? How does it mutate? Tracking, how has it been tracked thus far? And I have a paragraph on key arguments in relation to COVID-19 as a pandemic, not just COVID-19, but as a pandemic. Is it a pandemic? These are some of the key arguments. And then I have another section on the impact of COVID-19 on mental health. Remember that we were looking at student experiences. So for student experiences, we'll have mental health. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, I am not thumb sucking. I am not making up these ideas. They are based on literature. That whenever you investigate the experiences of something, be it a pandemic or not, you need to look at the mental perspective. Look at the social perspective, look at the financial perspective, look at the studies because these are students, look at the physical perspective, and look at future prospects. I am not making this up. It's based on what I have read on the topic of pandemics. So the people who were writing about COVID-19 last year, they did not have literature on COVID-19. It wasn't there. Because most of the researchers, this was the first time that they were facing COVID-19, but there was literature on past pandemics. There have been many pandemics in the past, and you use that literature then to support your arguments. Okay, so these are some of the examples on how you can plan, structure, and make sure that your literature review is comprehensive, that it is complete, it covers everything, but also that it is rich. There is depth to your literature review. We are not just looking at the wide range, but we are also looking at the depth. It has to be wide and it has to be deep and rich. And that is why you see there that I have subtopics and subsections to make sure that I am going deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, that was the, you can also, if you feel that you are not very gifted with these drawings, you can type it out. You see there, I have one, student experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have COVID-19 as a pandemic, and then Roman figure 1 definition, Roman figure 2 description, and under description I have appearance, mutation, tracking. I am saying, ladies and gentlemen, you are flexible. Don't say, oh Lord, I don't know how to draw. Do what works for you. You can do this on a piece of paper. You need to map your literature review for it to make sense and for it to be relevant and for it to be complete. Okay, as I end, avoid generalized claims. Don't just state things without supporting them. Avoid unacknowledged sources because that will be plagiarism. Avoid name dropping. Include seminal works. If you will write something on motivation, Gardner has to be there. Donner has to be there. Link your literature review with the key concepts and objectives. Because if your literature review says nothing about the key concepts, even in your title, then we have a problem. Avoid dated sources. If you're writing about technology and your work is full of work in the year 2000, it's old, it's dated. But that does not say you cannot occasionally refer to what it used to be. Then you can quote something in the 2000, 1990, 1950. But then come back. We need current sources. Okay, avoid disorganized ideas, and we can avoid that using that. Okay, and make sure that you use the right referencing style to avoid discrepancies, please. If it's APA, let it be APA throughout. We don't want to see, in this one, we have a comma, P, full stop, page number. In the next one, we have a comma and colon, and then page number. In the next one, we have a comma and page number. What is that? Talk to your supervisor. If it's APA, let it be APA throughout. If it's Harvard, it's Harvard throughout. A comma should be where a comma should be. A full stop should be where a full stop should be. Okay. And with those words, I'd like to conclude by saying a thorough and sophisticated literature review is the foundation and inspiration for substantial, useful research. I thank you.